Since the beginning of the country's creation, immigration in the United States have almost been synonymous. As our country continues to age, so does this issue. We are now at a point where a cycle of hyper-nationalism and bigotry rhetoric have seemed to sway not only the public and the average citizen, but also the people who pass our laws. As we deep dive into the personal story accounts of those who've been through the immigration process and people who worked through the change and to correct the system, Dr. Jennifer Bulcock, Assistant Professor of Philosophy and Assistant Director of the Center on Immigration, also shares her input.
There is a moral obligation to teach students in the K-12 curriculum about the immigration process and the history of immigration. So in the United States, we tend to have, through our textbooks, an encoded way of thinking about American history and who is a part of that history. Most textbooks do a very kind of clean, progressive narrative that starts with one event in history and clearly explain it as a system of progress leading to today. And that narrative leaves out a lot of the nasty history that we have in the United States, or oversimplifies it. And a lot of arguments in favor of this model for textbooks is that, well, younger children can't quite understand or grasp the complexities that come out of our actual history, and so they need to start somewhere, and so this nice clean history is where we start. However, that's not accurate to what the United States is. It's certainly not accurate for our contemporary society. And so I think there's an argument to be made that part of teaching about American history is recognizing some of the wrongs and the mistakes that we've made in our history, to be able to better understand how we got to where we are today.
Dr. Ronald Whitaker, Assistant Director Professor of Education and Director of School Relations in the School of Education at Cabrini University, is actively involved in teaching future teachers how to teach inclusion inside and outside the classroom.
Is extremely diverse, particularly for those teachers and educational leaders that we're going to be sending out into the front lines, whether that's serving in urban, suburban, or rural schools, public or private. We need to make sure that they are fully educated on topics pertaining to exemplar practices to support all students. That's number one. Number two, I believe that if schools and school districts are if they're committed, I guess I should say, to serving the needs of all students, what does it mean for them to partner with community leaders? So specifically, could we bring in community experts that could give a lecture on the histories of Native American students? Can we bring in experts that could talk about individuals from Africa, how it's important to understand their culture? So again, if schools and school districts are very important, and if they lack that expertise within their own building, there are community leaders that they can also partner with.
Mr. Hubert Wantong is the Assistant Director of Villanova University's International Student Office. He helps students get by and make sure they have the correct necessities in order to succeed while they're at the university.
We serve populations here at Villanova. We have an open concept office, and what I mean by that is we have just walk-ins. We do take appointments. We have approximately a little over 450 students that we track for the government. There are two populations: those that have visas, which are tracked by the government and we're responsible for, and then you have the undocumented population. We also serve faculty and staff here at Villanova. I'm not a big proponent of, America has always been, and I never understood this. I came from Canada. I don't understand America, to be absolutely honest in that aspect. My kids went through K-12 here, and what I don't understand is this. In Canada, we don't have the issue of taking, for example, a foreign language to that degree. My kids took Spanish, for example, and I didn't understand the disconnect here in America in terms of we teach a foreign language consistently through K-12. It becomes a component piece of our educational system, and yet the disconnect for me was and remains the continued hostility, as it were, to other cultures. I didn't understand. I still don't. So although we could say we teach geography, we teach language, I think the messaging is is beyond school. The message has to be also from families. It's more of an education, it's more of an understanding, it's a mindset not only from education-wise, but it also has to be from the families. What are you reflecting?
Well, families play a critical role in this conversation. And this is why it's important for families to work with local politicians to push them on some of their policies, push them on their position pertaining to the rights of immigrants. So that's number one. But then number two, I also think that families need to hold our schools accountable. So if you feel as though that education is being left out in the classroom, the families need to speak with the principals and other educational leaders in terms of ways to make sure that the curriculum that you're giving to all students is inclusive.